Good morning, Hope Christian Church. If this is your first time here, and I hope it is, I hope it's not. Anyway, this is Battle Cry. This is our youth group. When I started coming here 14 years ago, we didn't have a youth group. We had about 4 kids. And now we have a youth group like 30, 35 people strong, and they're just awesome. So you look around and you go, well, where's Stan? Now, don't jump up and leave now. This is Youth Sunday. So we're going to let these Utes run it today. And their Utes leader is Will Bruton, wherever he is. Where's Will? He left. Well, he's preaching today, so I hope he hadn't left too far. Anyway, it's really cool, and it's great to have the young people doing this. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I really do. I think it's just outstanding. If you're planning on coming next Sunday afternoon for the movie to see Frozen with all your kids and stuff like that, ain't going to happen. It's Mother's Day, and so it's been put off. Well, yeah, it's coming. It's going to be June 8th. Yeah. Well, that's what happened is they've changed it. We've changed the date to June. Yeah, it's been put off till June because of Mother's Day. You know, I thought, well, you know, all these people are going to bring their mothers to the free movie. I thought, it looks pretty squeaky. Okay, this afternoon, after second service, there's going to be a big Mexican dinner, lunch things put on by the youth. They're going to serve and stuff like that. It's $10 a head if you want to stay and have. And Juan is cooking, and Juan is a phenomenal cook. But if you can't stay, and you would still like to donate anything for the kids, for their stuff, there is a chance for you to do so. These will be out there, and we're hoping they'll be full. Anyway, so that's after second service, so if you want some really good Mexican food. Now, Juan served Mexican food yesterday at the men's breakfast, and I can attest to the fact that he's a really good cook, besides being a professional cook. Now, next Saturday, the kids are going to go to Six Flags, and I think we have 35 kids going from, I keep calling you kids, they're young adults, you're young people, you're not kids anymore. So quit acting like a bunch of kids, a bunch of rowdy kids. Anyway, they're going to be going to Six Flags, and we may need some drivers. So after the first service, if you can find Will or somebody in the back there, if you're available to want to go down a Saturday morning and come back next Saturday evening, with young people in your car. Anyways, Rock the Ridge is just around the corner. The sign-ups are out there. Yeah. And the kids are going to be, young people are going to be playing there also. Jeannie, who's sitting here, wave your hand, Jeannie. Yay, Jeannie. For the last 9, Rock the Ridge has been almost entirely responsible for collecting things for the raffle. And so if you can help her in any way by either bringing things in to give to her to use in the raffle, or if you know a sponsor that would like to sponsor something for the raffle, like give away things like meals at McDonald's. Keegan, where are you? Yeah. If you're in the McDonald's, always say hello to Keegan. He's back there, and he won't spit in your food or nothing, he said. Anyway, so if you know somebody that would be willing to make a contribution, please get a hold of Jeannie and help her do this. Take some of the load off of her and make it all share in the stuff. And Man Camp is coming up. Man Camp's a lot of fun. We do have a lot of fun. Good off-road bicycle riding. And Ron in the back there is going to say something about Man Camp. Are you? Oh, we got a garden open now. Ah, yes, okay. We're not done with Man Camp yet. Anyway. So anyways, so there'll be bicycles up there, and there's horses that you can't ride, but they come into camp while you're there. It's at a big old building, and the horses come in and torment you. They come in there hunting for food, and you're sitting there sitting around singing songs and stuff with Dave and the other people and the young people and Keegan, and pretty soon horses are nudging you. So anyways, one of the outreach programs we had this weekend, Saturday, was all of our sound equipment was taken down to a recovery revival, I guess, at Altarsgate this yesterday, and it's just another outreach thing. And so because your contributions stuff pay for all of our equipment. You're part of that, and so it's good to see that stuff is being used and we're sharing. Um, Now, you may have noticed that Stan is not here, and I'm not Stan, and Will Bruton's going to be preaching today. It's kind of funny. We got truck drivers preaching, deputy sheriffs preaching. This is pretty cool stuff. And then, and nurses. Anyway, so the reason Stan isn't here is he's back in Minnesota, and his son Zach's wife, Kate, graduated from college yesterday. So he's back there. So when you get ready to greet somebody, instead of just jumping up and running around and saying hello to people, will you stand up? Okay, what? Linda's going to say something first. There's also a sign up for desserts, and my wife's out of town, so I said I'd make them, and they said they didn't want any from me. I don't know what they mean by it. Anyways, what I'd like you to do now before you greet everybody is stand up and look at the camera and say congratulations to Kate. Congratulations, Kate.
Light of the world, you stepped down into darkness, opened my eyes. to say that you're my God. Give us our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. Lord, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory forever. We're singing, Amen.
In today's society, it's very easy to get caught up in the stress of everyday life. The feeling of not being good enough, of not being able to handle what's put in front of us. That's especially true for young people today. The Bible tells us in Psalms, cast your cares on the Lord and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. Today as we take communion, and we take in the juice that represents the blood of Christ and the bread that represents the body of Christ, let's ask God to take the burdens from your shoulders so that you may walk upright and keep your eyes on him.
The splendor of a king, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, let all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide. Trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Age to age he stands. Time is in his hands. Beginning and the end. Beginning and the end. The Godhead three in one. Father, Spirit, Son. The Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? All will see how great is our God. You're the name above all names, worthy of all praise. My heart will sing, how great is our God. You're the name above all names, worthy of all praise. My heart will sing, how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains. Yeah, your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. And I will find my strength in the shadows of your wings. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains. Yeah, your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. And I will find my strength in the shadows of your wings. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky.
Hey, Hope Church. This weekend, Tracy and I are in Minnesota watching our daughter-in-law Kate graduate from Crown College and celebrating our son Zach's accomplishment of his master's degree. So we miss you. We'll be back Monday, but we also know you're having an awesome worship celebration today back home. And, you know, there's a place in the scriptures where people were bringing their children to Jesus for Jesus to bless them, and the disciples said, get the kids out of the way. Evidently, they thought Jesus was too important for children. And Jesus said, let the little children come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And there is research that says many of Jesus' first disciples were actually in their teens. And we learn from Jesus that children and teens are not the church of tomorrow. They're the church of today, just like all ages are the church of today. And God cares deeply about children and about youth. And so one of the things that's so awesome about teens is they can change so quickly. They will make commitments. They can have very open hearts to the good news of Jesus. And that's what's going on right now with Battle Cry Ministry. We're so excited about what's going on there with the growth. We're so excited about Nathan and Will's vision to start this ministry, and for all the adult teams that work together with them to work hard. We're excited about all the teens that are coming to Hope and being a part of Battle Cry. You are revolutionaries, and what we're doing is something that's important today. The fundraiser, you're going to get an awesome meal after the second service. Juan is the bomb. And while you enjoy this meal, for a low price, you're going to be helping our teens go to Six Flags for a time of fun and fellowship and spiritual encouragement. So let's get behind our teens. And hey, Juan, if you have any left over, hook a brother up. Will, preach it, brother. Bonsai, Will. Bonsai, Will.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Stan, for the intro. So a couple weeks ago, Nathan approached me and he says, "Hey, so we're doing this youth fundraiser. I haven't been here for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 months on Thursdays because I work, and that's going to go on for another about 4 months." And I told Nathan before I stepped out, I said, "Hey, if when Katie has the baby, if you need to take some time off for whatever reason, she's the one having the baby. If you need to take some time off, let me know. I have some flexibility in my work schedule that I can change and be here for a couple weeks." So Nathan was like, "Okay, awesome." And then a couple weeks ago, he says, "Hey, so we're doing this fundraiser on May 4th, and we need you to preach to the church." And I was like, "Awesome. Okay." So he explained to me everything that was going on, and I want to say first off, congratulations, Nathan and Katie, on your baby. And boy, and he was 9.5 pounds. It was huge. That poor girl. So he's very healthy, and I'm sure will be just as crazy and alive as Nathan is as he gets older. I see Ayla. She's a doll, and I love her, and she's got that little bit of Nathan crazy. And since Seth is a boy, I'm sure it's going to be full Nathan crazy, which will be awesome. So at any rate, when I came up with a message, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous, so you might feel like you're watching a tennis match as I'm preaching, going back and forth. I get more nervous talking to the adults than I do with the kids for a couple reasons. One, with the kids, I can probably say some things that I can't say to the adults. And two, don't tell the kids, but if I say something wrong from the Bible, they're probably not going to know the difference, most of them. So they'll catch me on it later. But so I started thinking, well, what can I talk to our church about? I love this church. We have a lot of really great people. But one of the things that really came to mind was talking about keeping the youth alive in our church. A lot of kids, and I've seen it over the years of myself growing up, and they, we come to church, we bring our kids to church with us, and by the time they hit 17, 18, when they start kind of doing their own thing, they go away from it. And, I want to talk about how we can avoid that, how we can keep them here. They go away, many come back, some don't, and they all have their various reasons, but there's a saying that the church is one generation away from extinction, which I believe is totally true, because we don't put enough stock in what it is that our teens and our young people have to offer us in a church. One of the things in doing the research for my message that I saw, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome, is they were talking about how youth ministry is really one of the last things to get funded. But the youth are so important in this person's belief, and by the way, I agree with them, the youth should have the majority of the church budget, because that's how we're going to reach these young people, and that's how we're going to get through to them, is by getting them together, having these events. And I'm not up here to ask the church for money, but board it would be nice. So the youth are a very intricate part of the church. If we look back, and I think Stan even mentioned it, young people were used a lot in the Bible. A lot of the disciples were thought to be very young. Joseph, the son of Jacob, he was made to be the overseer in the house of the captain of the guard in Egypt when he was 17. Ruth was very young when she chose to stay with her mother-in-law and to be a blessing to her mother-in-law. David was only a boy when he killed a giant. Little kid, giant, rocking a sling, and boom, done. Josiah, David's son, he was only 8 years old when he became the king in Jerusalem. And probably the most well-known, Mary. Mary was thought to be very young, even a teenager, and she gave us a Savior. She birthed Jesus. And so in the years that I've been doing the youth ministry, I was a youth pastor at a church several years ago, got out of it for a while because of my own personal stuff that I had to work through. And when I came here to Hope and I saw 2 teenagers, I was like, hey, we need a youth ministry. We'll start it with these guys. And now we're running somewhere between 20 and 30 almost every week. You see, we have several of them here. 9 o'clock's kind of early on a Sunday when you're a teenager, so hopefully they'll be here at the next service. So one of the beliefs that I've held when I started working with the youth is that kids today, when most of us were younger, when we were teenagers, we really grabbed onto stuff. We grabbed onto stuff that we thought was cool. Kids today seem to do the same thing, but even more extreme. They grab onto something, they find something that they like, and they run with it, and it spreads like wildfire. My belief, my feeling, is if we can get them to grab a hold of Jesus, they're going to run with it. And they're going to spread a wildfire across this community and across our county, our country, our world. And they're just going to keep going. My hope is that like in 100 years from now, when I'm Tom's age, that that I'll be sitting out there and I'll see one of these kids up here talking. And the young people get so passionate about it. One of the problems is, as adults in these young people's lives, as parents, as family members, as a church body even, we really play a big part in what it is they're going to grab a hold of. And sorry, I've got to look at my notes here. As a church family and as role models, we have to be sure that what we're teaching them is the right things. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to stand up here and be like, oh, I did all this stuff right. Between my wife and I, we have 9 children. I have 6 adult children. And not all of them have a relationship with God. And much of that is because I was a young parent. I was a young dad. I became a dad when I was 17. And so I'm still working through my own stuff, and I'm trying to raise a kid, and it was very tough. My kids are great. They're really, really great. But at some point in there, they got turned off to church and to God. And now I'm kind of at the point where I just hope and pray that when I went in there Sunday morning and woke them up and said, get up, you're going to church, and drug them to church with me, because I had that. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I had that, and I'm like, you're going to church whether you like it or not, let's go. So I really hope and pray now that those things that they heard, whether they thought they were listening or not, or appeared like they were listening or not, come back to the front of their mind when they need it, and that they turn to God. Like I said earlier, when I was preparing for my message, I did a little research and found out some of the reasons why young people either don't go to church or why they may leave the church and why some of them may not come back. So we're going to take a look at a short video that talks about these things. And after the video, we'll discuss them a little bit more in the way that I see it. So while they're getting that ready, technical difficulties, how many of the adults in here, how many of you guys went to church and found Jesus before the age of 18? Okay. How many of you afterwards? So you did it before and after? Oh, that was Debbie's hand. Okay. Those of you that found Jesus before you were 18, how many of you went away and took you a while to find your way back? Okay, so that's most of us, actually. That was reading that, I read that same stat that there was a lot of people that were involved in the church. They found Jesus. They became Christians before they were 18, and then they went away. And at some point, when they got married and had kids or whatever, they managed to find their way back, or when their life totally broke down.
Involved or engaged in the church as other age groups, 18 to
And we'll watch
29-year-olds.
this now.
We call this generation. You might have noticed that here in America, there's one group that's not nearly as involved or engaged in the church as other age groups, 18 to 29-year-olds. We call this generation the Mosaics. And for most churches, this is a demographic black hole. Just how big of a black hole? Get this, 59% of Mosaics with a Christian background drop out of church after attending regularly as a teenager. Now, on the surface, this doesn't seem like a new problem. And in some respects, it isn't. People in this age group have left the church in droves for decades, but historically, many come back. If you think that's going to happen with today's generation, think again. Today's young adults are very different from their counterparts of the past. A lot of them are rethinking the major things in life. Stuff like whether or not marriage is still necessary, or if the church really matters. What's strange is, the majority of these dropouts actually still consider themselves Christians. They're big fans of Jesus, just not the church. Every Mosaic has their own unique reason for leaving the church, but ultimately, they all point their fingers at the Christian community, and what they're saying is, you lost me. Now, hold on. You lost me? Isn't that a little harsh? Well, maybe, but what a person really means when they say that to someone is, you're not making sense to me. Research from our team at Barna shows that millions of Mosaics don't feel like they can ask their most pressing life questions in church. So it's no wonder they turn to technology, pop culture, and their peers for answers. With all of the resources on the internet, young people have access to answers to lots of things, important and trivial. And some of the answers seem to make sense. But just because something makes sense, it doesn't mean it's the truth. Naturally, all that conflicting information leads to more questions and more confusion. These wandering souls are viewing the world through a distorted lens. They need the wisdom of the church to help them see things through the lens of faith, but they can't even see that. What we need is real dialogue and real answers to the questions that all too often just get swept under the rug. It means we stop ignoring the elephant in the room, roll up our sleeves, and seriously address the tough questions about science, sexuality, culture, and lifestyle. Let's be careful not to judge them too quickly, and give our young Christians the tools they need to cope with the modern world. We need to teach them to be discerning in today's culture, to be influential among their peers, as followers of Christ. Today's changing world is a tough place to live faithfully as a Christian at any age. But if we're gonna change the world together, we can't afford to let another young person say, "You lost me."
So I found that video and I thought, wow, that kind of hits home. And why is it? Why is it that, why would we have young people saying you lost me, and young people going away from the church? Like you can see, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things. A lot of it tends to be like, yeah, Jesus is cool, but the church, man, those guys just aren't right. To me, the way that I see that and think about that is it all really boils down to we as a church aren't relevant to them. We can't relate to them. They can't relate to us. Here at Hope, we're all pretty good at that. I've been to some other churches, been around some other people that really not so great at that. Anybody that's known me for like 5 minutes knows that I love music. I play the drums, I attempt to sing, and I've always got some sort of music on. Like if I'm doing stuff around the house, I got headphones on. If I'm, driving around in my patrol car, I got music on. I don't have headphones on my patrol car because then I couldn't hear. So I grew up listening to a big variety of music, mostly rock, little country, a little rap. I played saxophone, trombone, baritone, and started learning drums just a touch in high school. And So I really listened to a lot of things because we played some classical music, we played marching music, we played current music. And, you know, my dad always had the radio on the oldies station. So I grew up with that 50s, 60s, 70s music. My brothers, you know, in the 80s, when they were around at the few times that they lived at home with me, they would go back and forth between mom and dad's. They always had, you know, records and 8-tracks and tapes of the current popular rock bands. So that's kind of what stuck with me, is just rock music. I love rock music. When I became a Christian at 19 and was baptized, friends, family members, other churchgoers were encouraging me to listen to Christian music. I tried, but hymns in church was about all I could handle. I really loved the message. I love some of the old hymns. There's, I can't remember the name of the exact name of the hymn, but I remember the lyrics were something about "On the wings of a snow-white dove." When I hear that, it almost brings me to tears because that was my grandmother's favorite song. And when she passed away, we sang that at her funeral, and my grandfather would sing it all the time. He would just walk around the house singing it. And then when my grandfather passed away, we sang that at his funeral, and you know, just a great guy. And I can remember, it brings back memories of going to church with Grandpa. I didn't grow up in a church, but when we would come out here to California and go to church with Grandpa, he went to this little, I mean, this church makes that church look, or that church makes this church look huge. It was just this little tiny church called Pilgrim's Rest Primitive Baptist Church. And we would stand there and sing hymns, and you know, the old people behind me would, my cousins and I would start screwing around, and some guy that I didn't even know behind me would be like, "Psh, knock it off," you know, slap us in the back of the head. And then when Grandpa found out, Grandpa would slap us in the back of the head. So at any rate, you know, I enjoyed the hymns, I enjoyed the Christian music, and at the time, contemporary Christian music was pretty limited. And you know, I'm 19 years old. I got this big 1,000-watt stereo system in my car. I can't go around bumping Ray Boltz and Amy Grant. You know, but then I found there was a radio station up here in Paradise called Y105. A lot of you probably remember it. And they started playing a little bit more contemporary music. And then I found that, like, on certain nights of the week, between certain hours, they would play like my kind of music, but it was Christian music. And they would play like some heavy metal type Christian music, some rap Christian music. But it was very limited. And I heard a few bands and a few songs that I really liked. So I rushed down to the Christian bookstore in Chico and found some tapes and listened to those. And I really loved them. And it was getting a positive message, maybe not in such a traditional way, but still getting the message. There was a woman in my life that I love very much. She's like a mom to me. And she and her husband played a very intricate part in me becoming a Christian by being so loving to me. But she heard me listen to this stuff one day, and she's like, "Why are you listening to that garbage?" And I said, "What do you mean garbage? It's Christian music." And she's like, "No, Christian music is supposed to be uplifting. And, you know, Christian music is supposed to be pleasing to God. I don't think that kind of music is pleasing to God." And my response to her was that the Bible tells me and tells us to make a joyful noise to the Lord. It doesn't say what it has to sound like. And what I thought in my head, and I didn't say, is, "I've heard you sing in church. I don't think that's uplifting to God either." But I kept that in my head. I didn't say that. So as my kids got older and started developing their tastes in music, much like I did, they got their tastes in music mostly, until they hit more teenage years, from me and the stuff that I listened to. And what was really cool in that time too, in that time span, the genres of Christian music began to expand. And so, you know, pretty much now, if there's a style of secular music that you like, rock, country, rap, any of that, you can find a Christian artist that sings that same style of music. I still like to listen to my old classic rock, and felt really old when I heard Metallica on the classic rock station. But you know, so my kids were listening to this music, and like I said, some of it got a little more progressive, a little heavier. She heard them listening to that, and she asked them the same thing. How is that music glorifying to God? You know, and my kids never had an answer for her. But I said that to say, you know, I love her very much. She's a super, super nice lady. But her views, if you were doing something that she didn't believe was right, or if you asked her about something, her response to everything is, how is that glorifying God? How is that glorifying God? And, you know, or it just wasn't, if you couldn't answer that question, then whatever you were doing wasn't of God or wasn't godly in her eyes. Some of us, we just don't know how to answer that question. You know, sometimes we do some things that aren't necessarily bad, but it just feels good. It feels right, you know, and it's what we're in the mood for at the time. And I know that God understands that. If I screw up, He forgives me. But that kind of view, especially to young people, is very off-putting. And they're young and free and, you know, wild, and they like to do crazy stuff. And I mean, you know, we had a trampoline in the church on youth night, and kids are jumping on the trampoline, and Stan's like, if anybody gets hurt, I didn't tell you could do it. But, you know, I love the freedom that we have here, the freedom that we have to be able to do great stuff with the youth. You know, on New Year's, we had 78 kids in here worshiping God. We had a Christian rap concert. We had 2 Christian rappers that were in here rapping. Battle Cry played for the kids. We did crazy games. Just had all kinds of fun. But we also delivered a message, and we delivered a message about God. And I think we had something like 25 kids get saved that night. And a lot of that is because we have the freedom to step outside the box and not go, okay, everybody, we're going to come in, we're going to sit down, and we're going to pray, and we're going to talk about God. And you have to be this way, and you have to dress this way, and you have to look this way, and you can't have your hair this color or this style. You know, oh, you can't be friends with somebody because they don't believe in God, or you can't be friends with somebody because they're homosexual, or whatever the case may be. That legalistic view is just going to drive them away. So we have to figure out, how can we support our young kids, and how can we grow our young kids in God and push them into a relationship with God without beating them over the head with a Bible until they meet Jesus. And so, like I said, we have to approach it a different way. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he shall not depart. By having that view, are we really training them in the way that they should go? Are we doing it the right way? One of the things, the big things that I tell these guys, and they'll all tell you, is the best way that we can be a witness for Christ and a witness for God, especially as a young person, is to have that relationship with God. Because when you have a relationship with Him, you live your life differently than the rest of the world. That doesn't mean that you're like, well, I can't go hang out with you because you don't believe the same as me. It's more of, when I go through this issue in my life, when I have this problem, when this devastating thing happens, my parents get divorced, my grandparents die, you know, mom or dad got arrested. I continue to walk with a smile on my face. I continue to be me and to have my personality. And as a society, especially with young people, we naturally want what we don't have. So the other people that don't believe and the people that don't have that relationship with God, they're going to see you walking through these things. They're going to know, oh, wow, man, you know, their parents just got divorced. That's really tough, and I'm going through the same thing. But I see them, and they're still smiling, and they're still happy, and they're still running around with their friends and doing all the things, and here I am sitting in the corner. What do they have that I don't? And when that person approaches this young person that has a relationship with God, and says, what do you have? What do you have? What is that thing? How can you smile through this? They can turn around and say, I have God. He's got my back. I have a God that is bigger than every problem that's ever faced me. I have a God that can do anything he wants to anybody at any time. And all I have to do is have faith in him and to pray. And God will get my back. God will either get mom and dad back together, or he's going to make it okay. Because maybe that's the best thing right now. I don't know. When I went through my divorce, that's when I really became close to God. And, you know, I would go out every day on the advice of a great, great godly man. And every morning at 5 in the morning, because I didn't know what to do. I'd been with this woman since I was 14 years old. I'm 32. We got 5 kids. And I'm not, all of a sudden, it's me and my 5 kids. So I didn't know what to do. This guy gave me this advice. He says, I want you to go to the store, buy yourself some unleavened bread and some grape juice. And every morning, I want you to go find a nice quiet place as the sun's coming up, and I want you to have communion. So I did that. And there were times when at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm in this park that was behind our house where we lived, and I'm on my knees screaming, why, God? Why is this happening to me? What am I supposed to do? Help me, God. And one morning, I'm back there, and I'm just, I crying. I broke down. And all of a sudden, the wind stopped blowing, the birds stopped chirping, the crickets and frogs that were out there stopped. And it just got dead silent, and I just heard a voice tell me, it's going to be okay. And I didn't know what that meant until down the road. And now I know that I stood on that promise, and I had that belief, and I had that faith. And that's just a little story to illustrate how that can help you. And you get other people that want to know, man, how did you make it through that? I've had the opportunity to speak with a couple of guys in that same position. And it was great. And later they've come to me and said, man, thank you. And the guy that told me to do that, I went to him and I said, thank you. He'll probably never know how much that meant to me and how much that grew me in my relationship with God. And again, as adults, I think we need to adopt that. We minister to these guys and these young people by gracefully walking through those things, gracefully walking through those tough times and having faith that our God is bigger than our problems and he's going to take care of it. The young people today also need to know that they're valued and appreciated. A lot of things in life that we do as adults, because we've been doing it for years, we take for granted. And when a young person does that, it might be one of the biggest things that they've ever accomplished. As the adults in their lives, as parents, mentors, role models, church family, we have to remember to recognize that. My kids, when they were little and I was potty training them, the first few times that they used the bathroom by themselves, I mean, we made a big deal out of it. Yeah, woo, good job, you know, and high fives and, oh, here's your potty pop and your toilet treat and good job. And, you know, and we made just such a huge deal about it. And then after a while, that huge deal kind of faded away, you know, and they still obviously go to the bathroom in the bathroom where they're supposed to go. But at that moment when they were first learning, they wanted to do it more and more and more because it got mom and dad to notice. It got treats, it got celebration, it got praise. And, you know, we encourage them to continue that behavior. And so we also need to never stop letting the young people know that we're proud of them, that they do a good job. My current assignment at work, as most of you know, I'm a deputy. I'm assigned to, it's called the Alternative Custody Program. And so it's where people who are sentenced to do time in county jail, so long as they meet certain criteria, they can go home on house arrest and they wear ankle monitors. And they have to ask us for permission to do anything besides be in class or be at home. You know, part of the program is they have to come down to our office and they take a class or several classes that talk about substance abuse. There's parenting classes. There's one called moral recognition therapy that talks about why it is we do the things we do. And it's a good program, and it's actually pretty successful. A lot of people at first were like, oh, you know, whatever, they're just gonna let's go home. You know, I get to go do my time in jail, but be at home. But there's a lot more to it than that. Part of my role as a deputy there, or as an officer, is to facilitate them being able to do those things and help facilitate a recovery for them. And, you know, we encourage them to get a job. We encourage them to go to school, and, you know, they also have doctor's appointments and stuff like that. One of the other things we do is it's kind of a case management, mentoring, and we just keep tabs on them and try to guide them through this process. And it reminds me a lot of being a parent. You know, I've got 13 people on my caseload that I'm essentially like a parent for. Many of them are younger. You know, they're in their 20s. Some of them a little bit older that have been, you know, in and out of jail their whole lives, and they're finally just like, I'm fed up with this, please help. So there's one particular young lady on my caseload. She's 24 now. She's been using drugs since she was 15, and just kind of never had a shot at life from that point. And as some of you may know, if you've studied any kind of addiction studies or anything like that, when somebody starts using drugs, many times their brain stops developing at that age. So she's very young, and about a week or so ago, maybe a bit more than that, she actually, one of the classes that she's in at our program, she made it all the way through and she graduated the class. And I walk out in the hallway from my office and she comes running down the hallway and she's like, Bruton, guess what? And I said, what? She goes, I just finished my MRT class, which is the moral recognition therapy class. She goes, I just graduated. I presented my last step. I graduated. I got my certificate. And she was so excited, and I gave her a high five, and I was like, good job. I'm really proud of you for that. She broke down. She started crying. And I said, what's wrong? And she goes, I've never had somebody that's important in my life tell me they were proud of me. And I mean, that hit me. I was like, why? What could this young woman have possibly never done in her life to deserve somebody to say 4 little words, I'm proud of you? Or even simpler, a 2-word sentence, good job. And, you know, it really drove home the point to me that we need to make sure that with our young people that we're driving that home. We help them through their times of tribulation. We rejoice with them in their times of victory, even the smallest little things. It's just going to encourage them more and more to be great. Even when they fall, it's our job to be there to pick them up, dust them off, fill them up with love, and point them back in the right direction. And they get tired of trying to be a certain way or do a certain thing. And in Isaiah, it tells us, even youths grow tired and weary. Young men stumble and fall, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. A lot of the teens in our church, they weren't raised in church. A lot of them, their parents don't go to church, but they're here because they're looking for something better than what they have. It's interesting. I was assigned as the school resource officer at Las Plumas High School in Orville. It was very interesting to me the amount of kids from any kind of clique or group you could think of in the high school that would come to me and tell me, hey, Will, this person's got a knife in their backpack. This person's drinking. This person's got booze in their backpack, or they got weed in their locker, or they're selling weed, or this or that. And I was like, wow, I remember when I was in school, man, you didn't tell anything on anybody. And I eventually realized for some of them, that's the best thing that they have going for them. Home sucks. They get beat on by dad at home. They never get told that they're doing a good job. But at school, they have these teachers. They get their paper back with a an A and a smiley face and it says good job. It's the best thing that they got. The same is true for some of our young people that are here in this church. This church is the best thing they have going for them. And some of them consider Nathan and I father figures. Some of them consider, Rob and Corinne like parents, because it's the closest thing that they have. And they, Nathan and I, and all of us that are involved in Battle Cry, we always try to do our best to make sure that we celebrate even the smallest victories. At the beginning of every service, we bring everybody in and we sit down and we say, let's talk about what went good in your week. And sometimes it's, hey, I got an A on that math test I was stressing about. Right on, everybody claps, big party. Sometimes it's something silly, Sometimes it's just, hey, you know what? I was able to wake up with my alarm this morning. All right, woo, good job. Everybody's clapping. It doesn't matter. It's a victory. It's something that's important to them. It's something that they felt important enough to bring up in front of everybody. And for whatever reason, for them, what's going on in their life, that's a big thing. The other thing we try to do is try to let them see how important each and every one of them are. Always try to show them that the flaws that they see in themselves when they look in the mirror, or the flaws that they see other people at school point out in them, are not flaws. Those things are part of their testimony that they will use and God will use to do the work that God's put them here to do. Many times I find that the young people just need somebody to listen to them. They just need to talk about what's going on and getting bullied at school or this or that. A lot of times they don't even need advice. They just need you to listen. I found that out with my daughter when she was about 15 after her mom and I had gotten divorced. And I'm, just moseying around the house, and I look out the kitchen window and she's sitting on the back deck and she's crying. I go out there and what's wrong, sweetheart? And she's telling me about all the stuff that she's going through and the struggles she's going through. And I try to jump in with, hey, well, what you got to do is blah, 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 blah. And she goes, Dad, just stop, please. She goes, I just need to get this off my chest. I just need to voice this to somebody that's not going to judge me. Somebody that's going to just listen. Not coach me, just listen. And so from that point on, I really kind of adopted that. And with my daughter, I started asking, okay, is this one of those things where you want some advice, or do you just need an ear to bend? And you can ask some of these guys. I've probably asked them that too when they've talked to me. Do you just need me to listen, or do you want a little advice, or what do you want to do? And that made a huge difference in my daughter and I's relationship. For a very long time, she's like, this is my dad, he's my best friend. And, as a dad, I'm like, yes. And I think for the most part, she was always very, very open with me after that. And, since then, we're not quite as close. She's, moved on and living out of town, and we talk occasionally, but it's not quite the relationship that we had. But I feel that me being able to do that for her and be there for her helped her move through those issues and helped grow her relationship with God. And then the last thing I want to talk about is a lot of us think, well, I can't relate to these young kids. I'm more seasoned. I don't have anything to offer them because of my age or because of whatever. And so I want to read you a little bit of a story that talks about how each and every one of us can play a very vital and important role in their lives. A large church once hired 2 young, cutting-edge, hip youth ministry interns. They had the haircuts, they had the latest technology, gadgets, and the whole 9 yards. Each Friday morning, the church opened the doors to feed breakfast to any teenager that would come, followed by a devotional time before school began. At first, the teens flocked around the young 20s guys. Little by little, someone in the kitchen began to get noticed. The volunteer who made the pancakes would engage any teen nearby and ask them how their week was, or how their mom was, who he knew to be sick. As a simple cook demonstrated care and concern for the teens, they began to flock around him morning after morning. By the end of the semester, few teens hung around the cool youth interns. The cook shared his heart and their burdens and lots of pancakes. You might feel like you have nothing in common, and maybe you don't, but you do have a common humanity that needs God. And before we go to close in prayer, I just want everybody to remember that although you may not feel like you have the ability to effectively minister to young people and support them and be there for them, be who you are and just care about them and love them and let them see your relationship with God. Let's all pray. God, I thank you so much for the young people that are here, Father, for the luncheon that we're going to have after second service, for all the support that we get in this church. I realize that in this message, maybe I'm preaching to the choir a little bit because we have such a wonderful church that has such a huge heart for young people. And God, I just ask that you begin to work in our lives as their parents and mentors and role models and just family, Lord, that we can see the struggles that they go through, Father, that we can be understanding, that we can support them through that. Father, that we can rejoice in their victories with them. Father, and I pray that each one of them, as time goes on, will grow closer and closer to you. And Lord, that it's through our actions that leads them that way. Father, just be with us as we close out this service and as we go about the rest of our week. We love you and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Yes, please. Let's stand up and worship.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Oh, my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul. I'll worship your holy name. The sun comes up. It's a new day dawning. It's time to sing the song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me. Let me be singing when the evening
That's right. Before we give, what is our purpose? And how do we do that? Love God, love people. And remember, in Christ, we always have hope.
God's not dead. Let love explode and bring the dead to life. Love so bold to see a revolution somehow. Let love explode and bring the dead to life. Love so bold to see a revolution somehow. Now I'm lost in your freedom, and this world I'll overcome. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the